Hello and welcome to my first impressions on the Bard. So yes, how's it going everyone? This is just going to be my very first impressions on the Bard. Obviously they're going to be, post commentary. To be fair, I was going to do this as a live commentary, but it's better to do as post. So yeah, I'm just going to be explaining, my first impressions on the character. This, again, my own personal opinion on the matter, the subject. This is not going to be any factual evidence or whatever it might be. This is just purely opinionated based video. So if you agree or disagree, it's entirely fine, but do not be rude in the comment section down below. With all that being said, let's get started. So Bard, the newest class added in the console version of Trove. Obviously it was added on PC a while back, but it has been added on console. Now I got a limited amount of time using this character. Obviously this is a first impression, so using the character, it has not been even a week as of the time I'm making this video. So yeah, I am going to be talking about the character. What do I personally think about the character? My journey on leveling up to level 30, using the character a little bit more after level 30, and just going into going into over 10 and just grinding right there. And I'm going to say that I'm pleasantly surprised. Even though I did use the character on PTS, obviously I never used the character at end game. The highest power that I ever got with my Bard on PTS was like 8,000 to 9,000 power. Now using a character that is over 34,000 power and with proper stats, it's actually been very interesting just to look at it that way. So yeah, I will be talking about the character in general. So first and foremost, what do I think of the character? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it overpowered? Is it the best character in the entire game? Is it a mediocre character? So my own personal opinion is on the good category. It's a good character. It's not overpowered like some people I've seen talk about. Like, the character is not overpowered. It is far from being overpowered, but it is definitely a strong character. Now, I'm going to say a couple of little things regarding this character because I will be doing a comparison to one character that is actually my favorite magic damage character in the entire game, which is the Dino Tamer, because I do feel that this character flows in the same way as Dino Tamer. Those two characters are pretty similar. So if you do like the Dino Tamer, this is a character that is going to feel somewhat similar in certain little things, as I've noticed. So first and foremost, let's start talking about the character, what makes the character good. What makes the character good, in my own personal opinion, is just going to be the movement speed. The movement speed on this character is absolutely ridiculous. Having a plus 40% movement speed buff that lasts for 30 seconds is absolutely ridiculous, considering that the cooldown is very small. Not only that, while having a ridiculous amount of movement speed buff, it's super easy to maintain, so you don't need anything to maintain that movement speed buff. You don't need to do any specific setup, or you don't need to get any specific item in order to maintain that, which is a different contrast to something like the Neon Ninja, which you had to do Shadow Flip multiple times because the duration is very short, and Dino Tamer because it's old, that has a somewhat of a longer cooldown, so you had to use cooldown reduction items. In the case of this one, you don't have to do either of them, but yeah, you actually do need one stat that I have noticed, and that is obviously if you do play in a similar way that I do, which I just jump around. And one stat that I definitely noticed that it is pretty needed is going to be energy regeneration. At least getting energy regeneration on ring might be just very effective with this character, because all of the Bard's ability take way too much energy, especially the old. The old takes like 60 or 70 energy. It's a lot. So yeah, the ultimate ability takes a lot with this character. So personally, using energy regeneration is going to be very effective, especially if you're just jumping around using the Jubilant Song and Epic Riff like all the time. So yeah, that's going to be like the only stat that I see that this character needs. But either way, with all of that, I do feel, with all of that into consideration, I do feel that the character is absolutely amazing. And even more so, it is going to end up being that this character's momentum is ridiculously good. It is almost the same as, let's just say, Vanguardian or Knight or something like that, which is almost the top of momentum in the entire game. For those who don't know, momentum is when you actually just kill an enemy. It's just the same term as momentum. You pretty much maintain the same force even after killing an enemy, which is you get the speed momentum. So in the case of this one, you use basic attack, which the basic attack is super fast, and it does pretty decent damage, enough that you can actually one-shot at max stats against regular enemies, so 2.5 stage 1. So just saying that the momentum is actually really good. But aside from that, like, the character on its own has, you know, some notable problems that I noticed. Mainly, number one is going to be, obviously, the basic attack is somewhat inconsistent, and what I mean by that is the same inconsistency that I do get whenever I'm using the Vanguardian. So, especially with servers being somewhat janky, obviously it's Trove, the hit detection seems to be somewhat off sometimes on the basic attack, especially if you swipe your aim and you throw down the basic attack. Sometimes it will register as you hitting the enemy, but it will not register any damage. So you had to hit an enemy again. It does happen quite frequently, I've noticed, and it happens quite frequently, even more so even in chest, on dungeon chest. Like, for some reason it's just ridiculous. It feels like it takes longer with the bard to destroy dungeon chest sometimes. So I don't know. So that's a little bit of a problem that I noticed. It's somewhat inconsistency with the basic, but if you are playing without like barely any lag, the basic attack inconsistency is actually not that big of a deal. And another thing that I've noticed is going to be damage multipliers. Multipliers on this character are not high with the exception of tier 3 basic, which if you're speed farming, for the majority of the time you're only going to get that very infrequently. You have to actually work towards getting stage 3 basic. I'm going to explain that in a bit. But if you're just speed farming like the same way that I'm doing in the background, you're going to get sometimes either stage 1 or maybe sometimes stage 2 basic attack. But the thing is, with the basic attack, is going to be that it does 2.5 times damage multiplier and 4.5 times damage multiplier, if I do recall, on stage 2. 2.5 times damage multiplier is the same multiplier as the knight. Knowing myself from using the knight a long time, the damage multiplier, in order to actually start one-shotting regular enemies, you need to be close, if not max stats with the character. Right now with the 34 KPR bard, I'm not one-shotting regular enemies, so the momentum is very inconsistent. So maintaining movement speed buff, it can be quite a pain. So, but yeah, that's the thing. So you have to activate Arcane Emblem in order to do that. But it's even more apparent whenever you are talking about lower stat. That's where the comparison with Dino Tamer comes into play. So Dino Tamer is insanely good once you start reaching the higher stats. Like, it becomes really good, and it's even more ridiculous with the Bard subclass. I'm going to be doing a video regarding the Bard subclass. It's absolutely ridiculous. With that character on its own, with the Dino Tamer, it's actually very effective. Having high stat, it makes the character very effective. The Bard is no exception. Again, the multipliers are not high, with the exception of tier 3 basic attack, which you need 7 melody counts, and you're not going to get there like all the time unless you go for it. And if you go for it, you're going to lose a lot of the other things. That you had to use all of the abilities, which is just time lost. But if you can maintain it, more power to you. But either way, with a 4.5 times damage multiplier with second stage on basic, that means that you are definitely on the lower stat. You're not going to be able to at least even two-shot enemies. Maybe you will be able to two-shot with Arcane, but for the majority of the time you are going to just hit an enemy 3 times if you're not even using Arcane Emblem, even sometimes even using Arcane Emblem. It is going to be much more apparent, because if you're comparing that character to some of the other top tier dungeon grinding characters, at that point all of those characters are actually one-shotting, so they're killing much quickly. So even if you do have higher movement speed, it's going to take you longer to kill the enemy, rather than the other characters, which are just pressing a button, dead. You know, Ninja, Knight, Rev, Vanguardian, all of those characters are one-shotting because multipliers are high. And yeah, with this character, with the Bard, you are definitely not going to notice it, again, unless you go into tier 3 basic attack, which actually just makes your basic attack does 7 times damage, which can one-shot. And at that point, yes, the Bard even becomes great. So it doesn't have the same problem as something like Dino Tamer at that point, so because it does have that as an option. But even if once you remove that, whenever you're trying to just actually speed farm the character and just try to waste as little time as possible, you are definitely not going to notice that. You're definitely going to notice that you might need higher stats, and that's not counting like the other two abilities. The other two abilities, Singing Crystal and Nimble Dance. Both of them do like really low damage. Increase is 3.5, Nimble Dance is 2. So both of them are going to dish out pretty low damage, so you are not going to one-shot even with those abilities. So yeah, you are definitely going to notice a little bit of a problem with Multipliers, similar to Dino Tamer. So that's where the only problem that I see with this character is going to be towards the earlier portions of the game, especially when you're talking about Uber 10 and just grinding in general, and that comes into play once again with Dels. So with Dels, the character on its own, I do feel that the character is on the weaker side of things. It's really good just getting towards the boss. This is one of, if not the best Roger in the entire game, because again, 30-second movement speed buff, you can easily maintain that while all the movement speed buff are active with pretty good momentum. Like a low portal, this this character is absolutely ridiculous. But just dealing out high DPS, again, you need to be in stage 3 on basic, and stage 3 on basic is just a weaker gunslinger. So I'd much rather just give this character for dungeon grinding, which is just going to be where it is at its best. It's similar to Dino Tamer. It has above average DPS similar to Dino Tamer. It is a good speed farming character that does have low multipliers. But it is a character with a strong movement speed buff and a really strong momentum. But I do feel that this character has an edge against the Dino Tamer at higher stats. The reason being is, yes, Dino Tamer does have more range. This character has the actual correct range that you want on a speed farming character that wants a lot of momentum. Allow me to explain. Allies in the entire game, like all of the allies, Aviator, Rat Berserker, Animated Dog, all of those types of allies have a limit of 15 blocks on where you can get the movement speed buff. In the case of Dino Tamer has more than 15 blocks in this basic, and the Bard has a 6 block if you had the Classium ability. So 6 block obviously is less than 15, so you will be able to maintain movement speed buff all the time with this character. It's the same similar thing that I mentioned with the Knight. It's a similar thing with the Vanguardian. All those characters can easily maintain movement speed buff. That's because they can actually just kill the enemy in its max range and still get movement speed buff, which you have to be careful sometimes on long range character like the Dino Tamer. So, and even more so that this character actually has a plus 40% movement speed buff, which is absolutely ridiculous. And the damage multiplier on both characters is not that different. Well, yes, it's somewhat different. It's somewhat pretty big difference, because both basic attack pretty much attack at the same speed. And if you're in stage 1 with this character versus the Dino Tamer, on old you will be doing 1 times damage multiplier less, but if you're in stage 2 you are doing 1 times damage multiplier more. So yeah, it's pretty much in the same realm. But yeah, that's essentially what is going to boil down with this character. It's going to be in a similar realm to something like Dino Tamer. It's a strong, very good dungeon grinding character, but needs somewhat of a decent amount of stats if you want to make it effective. Doesn't have problem with survivability, doesn't have problem with anything else. It's just that in order to maintain the high movement speed, you need to kill enemies just as fast. Otherwise, it's just going to have the same problem as the Neon Ninja early game, which you can move really fast, but it's going to take forever to actually just move around from point A to point B. So yeah, that's essentially what it's going to boil down to. That's essentially what is going to end up being with this character, similar to something like the Dino Tamer. But with all that being said, yeah, my first impressions on the character is just that it is a very strong character. I was pleasantly surprised on how good this character actually was, and I actually did enjoy the character leveling up to level 30. And also using it a little bit, obviously probably in the background footage that you're seeing, and before the actual background footage. With all that being said, thank you once again for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. Take care and keep on hunting. And let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think of the Bard? See ya.